I am so glad you convinced me that the family car should be the Defender 110. It is so beautiful inside. It's so comfortable, and it just feels indestructible.
Yes, it really is. I've been waiting a long time for the new model to come out. The Defender 110, I'm telling you, it's my favorite car of all times. It's my third one. You know, I have stories of going off-road. The guy managed the group. He was like, what are you doing in this beautiful car? I'm like, I'm going off-road. He's like, are you sure? Because you can use one of ours. And then they look like Mad Max cars. I'm like, no, we're going to do this. And he was shocked.
Wow. Well, it's great because the Defender has been reimagined for 21st century adventure, and its unparalleled off-road ability, as well as its robust interior, are invaluable whether you're headed towards uncharted territory or just a weekend of exploration. The Defender 110 tackles challenging surroundings with absolute confidence. The SUV conveys strength outside and in, featuring peerless technology like an intuitive driver display and an award-winning infotainment system. That's my favorite part, to keep you connected no matter where the journey takes you. Adventure is unique to everyone, and so is the Defender. Choose from the two-door Defender 90, the four-door Defender 110, or the larger Defender 130 with the ability to seat up to 8 passengers. You'll find uncompromising performance in all three. So pack up and go even further with the Defender 110. Learn more at LandRoverUSA.com/Defender.
Sometimes it takes a different approach to help you unlock your true potential. Capella University's game-changing FlexPath format helps you learn at your own pace and fit earning a degree into your life. From before you enroll to after you graduate, you'll be supported by people who are invested in your success so you can pursue your goals knowing that help is available if you need it. Imagine your future differently at capella.edu.
This isn't your average business podcast, and he's not your average host. This is the James Altucher Show. Today on the James Altucher Show.
With literally no media support at all, I sold 3 million books to people who don't read. My stuff blew up because all I did was stand up and use my real name and tell my real stories about my real life, and people freaked out on both sides. Some people freaked out because they loved that someone was telling the truth, and the arbiters of culture freaked out because that threatens their status and their identity. No one wants to face this or talk about this or think this, though. When you have an identity, almost everyone, once they lock in their identity, there is no fact that will ever shift them off that identity. Ever. And they will literally ignore things clear as day, right in front of their face, even things that threaten their lives, if it threatens their identity. And I get why people are afraid, but then you got to ask yourself, am I going to speak my truth, or am I going to be silenced? And if you want to be silenced, that's fine. It's just you're going to live a shitty life.
How many times have you been on the podcast, Tucker?
I believe this is number 4? 3 or 4?
I think it's like 5 or 6. Because even one time, Brian Koppelman, the guy who makes billions and wrote Rounders,
of course.
He even came on once for his 4th time and said, I'm finally equaling the number of times Tucker Max has been on the show. So
I haven't been on for a while, though, man.
No, you haven't been on a while. We have a lot of catch. I feel like the only times we get to catch up
are on the podcast.
On podcast.
Yeah, I know.
So we've known each other. I feel like in, I don't know, internet years, we've known each other forever.
2 decades or something. Internet years.
And we've been in the trenches in a lot of things.
Dude, I put Choose Yourself together. I put that whole team together.
Yeah, no, that's
and
just
that was
it.
before my company.
Like just as an example, the book Choose Yourself, you, me, Ryan Holiday were sitting around a table brainstorming titles, marketing, content. Niels Parker, your editor, was the editor on Choose Yourself. You introduced me. Your whole team.
Erin Tyler, who did the cover. She says hi, by the way. She loves you.
Love her. Yeah. She did the interior design.
She works full-time for my company.
I know. I've read her stuff about culture on your company. And then on the podcast, you helped me put together this podcast, back in 2014.
Right, I forgot I helped you.
Yeah, you booked me a lot. You still book me a lot of guests, but you were seriously booking guests then.
Yeah, Yeah, I couldn't go fast enough for you though. You wanted 4 guests a week, and I'm like, dude, this is too much. I can't do it.
But also, I was driving myself crazy. I was burning out, which I've never succeeded in recovering from. But then you went off to start Book in a Box, which is now Scribe Media.
Yep.
But you've gone through so many reinventions. I want to talk about all those. We've talked about them before, but I want to, now that the world's changed, I want to talk about them again. But just how's it going?
Dude, good, man. I can't complain. I got an amazing wife. I got 2 great kids. Company's doing great. We got an amazing CEO. Like, I got nothing really to complain about.
I should mention too. I should thank you. Like, first off, just as an intro, your initial kind of breakout into the world was you wrote several amazingly well-written books. I Hope They Serve Beer in Hell, Assholes Finish First, Hilarity Ensues. What's the title? Sloppy Seconds. Yeah. And then you wrote about Mate with
Jeff Miller.
Jeff Miller, about evolutionary psychology and dating. We've talked about all of these books, but I will repeat again. I Hope They Serve Beer in Hell is one of the best written books ever, and many people disagree for weird reasons. Everybody's got their weird
ideological reasons. No one disagrees about the book. They disagree about the ideology.
Well, I think actually most people who disagree just haven't read the book.
No, of course not. It's just a signaling mechanism for
right.
them. They're going to say, oh, I'm so moral and wonderful because I'm going to tell you I don't like this.
Well, okay, let's start with this, because I had a conversation with someone yesterday saying all this shit about you. And I was like, no, Tucker has been such a good guy to me, such a good friend. I've read all his stuff. What you're saying, he didn't actually write. But
the perception is...
I said the story you're referring to, someone literally shit on him. He's self-deprecating.
It was a girl.
He's honest.
Yeah.
He was like the only person... the key to good writing is being really just super honest, bleeding on the page. And by the way, as an extra benefit, it's hilarious.
Yes.
And it's like Hunter S. Thompson in the fratire world, which is a genre you invented.
Right.
And all your stories, like I always remember the one story where you're at the Las Vegas bachelor's party and you refer to, there's 2 types of men. There's the ones who are going to go off and they want to do hookers,
coke and hookers, guys, and then there's beer and hot girls, guys.
Right, and like one set of guys wants to have fun with women who also want to have fun,
right?
And the other guys are cheating on their wives,
right?
And I know you. I know your amazing wife, Veronica, your kids, your years and years of Freudian psychoanalysis, Buddhism, everything.
Yep.
Like you acknowledge some of the stuff you've written might not have, might not reflect you in the best light, which credit to you for writing about that. Yeah.
It definitely doesn't.
Right.
There's no argument.
And B, like, it's so, I'm sorry I'm talking so much.
No, please, go ahead.
But like I said to this woman, let me recount to you a conversation I had with 3 other men earlier that day. And I recounted the conversation. She was like, that's disgusting.
What was the conversation? What was the tenor of it?
There were 2 aspects that were the tenor. One was, I don't mean to be crude on the show, but one was a guy was talking about, isn't it great the first time you experience a blowjob, and they were telling their stories, and then it comes to me, and I said, I don't know, I'll let you know when it happens to me, and of course everyone started laughing,
Right.
And then the next guy was like, he's 50 something. He's like, how can I date a model? And so they were strategizing how to use Facebook, target make an ad targeting every woman from 18 to 24 living in New York City who likes Wilhelmina models, and put some of your articles on there, and they won't know that you're just targeting them. It'll seem like you're famous. And so this was the kind of conversation. My point being that this is what men are talking about, and
some
Tucker
men.
actually,
Some men,
some men.
definitely.
Like, it's not like I was saying, no, do this.
Right, of course.
But, I'm happily in my relationship, and you've known me for a long time. I've been kind of, to a fault, a serial monogamist.
Yep.
And, but you actually wrote
this stuff and just were honest. Nobody's ever honest. People need to learn how to be more honest in their writing.
Yeah. Dude, you know, it always reminds me of, the fable of the emperor has no clothes.
Yeah.
Right? And so, like, the scammer comes in and convinces the emperor that he's got these amazing things and only the smartest, best people can see him, and there's nothing there. So the emperor says he can see him, and then the whole court follows suit, right? And the emperor goes on a parade in his underwear, actually naked, and everyone has to, like, pretend that it is what it is, right? Because no one wants to be the person who calls out the emperor. But, like, there's a little kid, right? In the fable, the little kid kind of says loudly, "Why is the emperor naked?" And so the way it's told in modern times is everyone snaps out of the reverie, right? And they all realize the emperor's naked, and then they all kind of learn, right? Do you know what happens in the actual fable?
No, and that's interesting because I know a lot of fables are sort of rewritten for modern times to be nice.
Here's what happens. They kill the kid. Because when you tell the truth to a bunch of people in a delusion, they don't want to hear the truth. They want to live with the delusion because it reinforces their identity and their status, right? And that's kind of the position that I found myself in. My whole life, I was like, I'm going to tell the truth. I don't give a shit what the consequences are. I don't care. Like, I'm not going to lie either to myself or to others. And that's just it. And so, like, that's why when I wrote my stuff, it never occurred to me that writing down true stories of what I did would be funny to anyone outside of my friends, because we were all doing that, right? And I assumed everyone was doing it. And I assumed, like, oh yeah, like, my friends will think it's funny, but that's it. Turns out, being a young, naive guy, and I was very naive when I was younger in a lot of ways.
Everybody was. That's the
of
point.
course, but I feel like I was even more than most. And turns out no one tells the truth, right? That's sort of one of the lessons of adulthood, is that no adults have it figured out and they're all fucking lying, right? Well, I mean, that's the lesson that I learned. And so my stuff blew up because all I did was stand up and use my real name and tell my real stories about my real life. Not at all saying this is what you should do or this is how you have to be. This is just who I am and what I do, and that's it. And people freaked out, both on both sides. Some people freaked out because they loved that someone was telling the truth, and the arbiters of culture freaked out because I said the emperor has no clothes, and they could not deal with that because that threatens their status and their identity. That's how it plays with me, dude. And I'm not trying to make myself out to be a hero, because someone in that vein I would call a hero is someone more along the lines of Nassim Taleb or Jordan Peterson or those types, right? Those are the types that I would call a hero. I was more of a jester or a gadfly, but it's the same impact.
Yeah, and the way we met, I was almost writing similar types of, it was very honest types of stuff about.
You write very similar stuff to me. We're just different people.
Yeah.
So, yeah.
And so, like, I was basically saying, all these pundits on these business shows.
They're all full of shit.
Yeah, they're full of shit, and they've all gone broke. They've all had the worst things. Like, I would write these stories about what would happen to me going broke and all the experiences I've had, and they would trash me on Twitter, but then write me like, sorry, but the same thing happened to me also, but I couldn't. I can't actually say that, or they'll never let me back on the show. Yep. And I was ostracized for this. And the way you reached out to me when somebody actually was like trashing me, and I was responding, and you wrote me and said,
no, you wrote a whole piece. I remember it very clearly. You wrote a whole piece about how, like, essentially talking about how you handled haters and people who trash you, but also kind of fretting over it, right?
Yeah.
And the point you were, I think, making in the piece, if I remember correctly, was like, I have to pretend they don't. Basically, you were trying to figure out a way to route around the emotional issue. And what I wrote, this is in, I think it's in Choose Yourself. If it's not, it's in a piece you wrote. What I said was, no. What you have to do is reframe whose opinion actually matters to you, right? And that's the way, a lot of people who read my stuff, especially ones who are kind of young emotionally, right? Which I was when I wrote my stuff. But a lot of them will read my stuff and say, how do you not care what other people think? And I'm like, why? I'm not a sociopath. I care what people think. I just only care about the people I know and the people I love and the people whose opinions I respect. Like, if you were to come to me and say, Tucker, I think, behavior X that you did is kind of messed up and we should talk about it, that would impact me and I would talk about it, right? I wouldn't be like, oh, screw you, James. If you don't agree with what I say, then to hell with you. Like, I'm not Trump, right? Like right. I'm not, that's not who I am. But most people, the sphere of, let's say, caring for me is very small and tight. For most people, it's very large, and it's like them. It encompasses so many of they and them. And I'm like, I ask people, aren't you upset about what they think? I'm like, who is they? Define they to me. People. What people? Right? And most people can't even define that. If you do get them to define, they'll say things like, well, society, or well, my friends, right? I'm like, what friends? And then you kind of dive them down. Eventually you'll get to, at the core, either it's parents, right? You'll get that a lot. Well, what would my mom think? I'm like, well, whose life are you living? Yours or hers? One. And two, if your mom doesn't love you for expressing who you truly are, I got to wonder about at least certain aspects of that relationship, right? That's part of it. The other part is they'll say, well, so many people essentially want to be the crowd in The Emperor Has No Clothes. They don't want to be the ones that say the truth because they are so deeply afraid of being ostracized, being killed, right? And I get it, because that's what happens. We're in the age now of this, of the social media lynch mobs coming after people. And I get why people are afraid. But then you got to ask yourself, am I going to speak my truth, or am I going to be silenced? And if you want to be silenced, that's fine. It's just you're going to live a shitty life.
It's interesting because, and I know you go through the same thing every year. Like every year, we're always in a constant state of reinvention, and we'll talk about your various reinventions, but there's always that crowd that is going to hate you for that reinvention. And so every year, somebody starts some groundswell of hate against me, and I have to once again figure out psychologically how I'm going to deal with it. Like, maybe it was like 7 or 8 months ago, like in January, there was so much hate on Twitter against me on a Saturday night at 1 a.m. And you and I have had this discussion 1,000 times since 2011. But there I am, 1 a.m. on a Saturday night. My girlfriend's asleep in the other room. And I'm literally tweeting, I can't handle this. If someone really has a problem, call me right now. And I tweeted my phone number, and people from Australia were calling me, Canada, LA. And I was talking to nobodies till 6 a.m. And the only thing they would really say was, whoa, I can't believe you answered the phone. Yeah, no, I didn't mean it that way. Sorry. Yeah, it's cool that you answered the phone, by the way.
The madness of the crowd, man. In a crowd, people act totally different than they do as individuals.
Yeah. But I was stupid for even, like, I should have just been sleeping. So
100%.
And you tell me that every time, but it's still hard. It's still hard when 1 million people hate you.
Yeah, I mean,
I'm exaggerating. It's not 1 million, but it feels like it.
It is. It is hard. Like, I'm not going to pretend like I have some superpower that, like, insulates me from that. But like, I'll tell you, man, there's a great book out about this now. So the three great, and this is going to answer the question, the three great titans of 20th century sort of psychological thought. Actually, there were four. The four great titans of 20th century psychological thought were William James, Sigmund Freud, Carl Jung, and then there's this other guy that everyone forgets about, named Alfred Adler.
I was going to say Alfred Adler. I love Alfred Adler. I love everything he writes.
Adler's stuff can be a little difficult to really apply because, he wrote in the sort of mid-19th century sort of way that academics wrote. But there's a book called The Courage to be Disliked by two Japanese guys, actually, that just got translated into English.
The Courage to be
Disliked. And
I have seen this.
It's a fantastic book.
It's funny, I've downloaded it, but I have not read it yet.
You should read that. I think it would really, really help you. The basic point of Adler's sort of idea is that other people's opinions of you are their problem, not yours. And it kind of
which intellectually I believe in. But when you see people, and I'm sure I've seen people I've given jobs to. I've seen people I made money for trashing me suddenly, like, oh, James is totally...
So here's the thing. So, like, think about this. Think about the psychological cost of that. If, let's say I'm that, like, I'm person X and I used to work for you and you did all this stuff for me, right? Now I kind of got big a little bit on my own. Like, you and I know who I'm talking about. I've dealt with people like that in my life, right?
Yeah.
Several.
Yeah.
And then once they get big on their own, then they're like, okay, now I'm going to go crap on the guy who helped me here. That's super common. Not everyone does that, but that's super common. And so there's two ways to react to that, right? You can internalize that and you can make that about you, or you can realize, you know what? That's their decision, and you know now, okay, I'm not going to deal with them anymore. Now I know who they are as a person, and that's fine. I'm just going to not interact with them in my life, but they're going to have to bear the psychological cost of that, not me. They made the decision to essentially be an awful person.
And I guess they're trying to outsource that stress that they have to you.
Yes, exactly, right? And so they have to live with that. You can make yourself live with it, but you don't have to, right? And it's not that it doesn't hurt. Okay, yeah, it hurts. Like I thought I knew someone, I trusted them, I gave part of myself to them, and they rewarded me with treachery. That sucks, and that's not fun. But you can deal with that in that moment, and then you can just move forward with your life and realize, okay, I need to, maybe learn what I need to learn from that. But I'm going to move on, and I'm only going to have people in my life who give to me in the way I give to them. And yeah, but there is a cost to pay for that, man. Like it takes courage to sit there and understand, you know what? Not everyone's going to like me. And especially when you do something. And even aside from the identity, social justice warrior mobs now, let's go back 5-8 years. That didn't really exist. At least not it existed against me, but only at the fringes, right? Regardless of the social times, whenever you do something at all, some people will hate you for it. Right? It's called tall poppy syndrome in Australia.
What's it called?
Tall poppy syndrome. The idea is in a field of poppies, the tall one gets cut down, right? And so the reason they're going to hate you is because your growth, when someone sees you grow and do something, anything, they, even on a really small scale, get a promotion at Subway, for God's sake. I mean, I'm not talking about being a master of the universe, although it extends to that. I'm talking about go from a line worker to assistant manager at Subway. The other line workers will hate you, or they have one option. They need to root for you. They need to say, you know what, that's a good person. They worked hard. They deserve it, right? They can see it as something you did. Or the other way, depending on the type of person they are and how they emotionally orient to the world, they have to hate you because your success to them reflects on their lack of success. And so now they have to face the fact that they didn't work as hard as they could have, assuming, let's say, they want the promotion, right? They didn't work as hard as they could have. They didn't do the things necessary to get promoted. And so, does call it anger. They can either turn that inward and see, you know what, I haven't, and they can take responsibility for their actions and then change their actions to then get promoted. Or what a lot of people do, I don't want to say most, but a lot of people is they can externalize it. And then now they can come up with a story. Well, James buttered up the manager and he's taking credit for my work, and they can make you evil, right? That's what people have to go one way or the other.
Well, it's interesting because, one of your reinventions, of course, was when you teamed up with a prominent evolutionary psychologist, and you had a podcast with him. You did the book Mate about, using evolution, as opposed to the pickup artist scene, you used evolutionary psychology to more deeply understand dating and how it works. So part of this is related to that. When someone sees another person move up in status, we get back to the DNA of our primate ancestors, which is that cortisol spikes. And people don't realize there's two ways to deal with it, which is what you just said. One is to try to put the other person down in status, which then relieves the cortisol. And the other is to kind of go along with it and say, oh, okay, maybe this is aspirational to me. And that will relieve the cortisol. Yes. So the body just wants to relieve the cortisol.
Well, there's actually 3 ways. So you just talked about the 2 most common ways. The third way is kind of what I was talking about. And this is like the advanced sort of uber Buddhist way, is to realize that none of us are actually in competition, right? That with the exceptions of some literal things, like if you're playing in the NBA, you are in competition with the other, like with very specific bounded games.
Well, in man-made rule-driven things.
In bounded games, in chess, we're clearly in competition if we're playing, right?
But we agree in advance to be in competition.
When we agree, we are in a finite game, right? You can realize you actually are not in competition, right? It would be so easy for me to look at you, because when we started, I think I was probably bigger socially than you, media-wise. Now I think you're much bigger than I am. It would be so easy for me to like be jealous and hateful and whatever, but like we're not competing, man. Like your success doesn't detract from mine, and vice versa. That now I don't want to say like I'm like this everywhere, because I am not real good at that in certain other areas of my life. I have to catch myself, right? Like I'll see a company in a competitive sort of space to us. Like we don't really have true competitors, but we have alternatives that you can use, right, to help write your book. And I'll see someone doing well. I get that feeling you're talking about, right? Where it's like, screw them, or like, okay, we got to double down and be more responsible. Be more responsible and focus on yourself is the better alternative other than trash them, right? But the best alternative is to realize, and I tell this to my team all the time, and my CEO and I have discussions about this all the time. We don't actually have competitors. Now, that's not necessarily true in all business, but we don't. We are in a white space, a new field that is opening up, and if we just focus...
And it's an enormous space.
Exactly. It's a multi-billion-dollar space, and if we just focus on our customers and ourselves, we are going to win. And whether we're first or not, we're going to win.
You're in a space that's obviously a writing space. I want to talk a lot about Scribe and what you do. You basically help people with stories, but don't have necessarily the skills or the time to write a book. And by the way, it's a hard skill that people don't realize is very, very difficult. You help them put out an amazing book. A recent customer who's been on the podcast is one of my all-time favorite comedians, Tiffany Haddish. You guys wrote a great book for her. Yep. It was amazing. She was amazing. And also it's a testament to you guys that she chose you. She was going through her biggest peak upswing in career, which just keeps going, and she chose you to work with. It's another thing that came up in topic yesterday with my friend was that, like, look, Tiffany Haddish, it's not like she didn't know who Tucker Max was, and she chose him. She had many choices. She chose him to write the book with. Yep. So, but I want to get to that in a second. One thing I've noticed with you is, as part of these reinventions, I think at first, it's what you were just saying. At first, you were really into the numbers. How many people are following the blog, buying the book, following me on social media? Now, because you're focused on the business, seems like and you focus on your family, seems like you took a step back from that worry, which is an addiction, that worry. Like that, yes. So many millions of people are addicted to how many Instagram followers that I gained today. I see people with like 3,000 Instagram followers will come to me and say, I lost 15 followers today.
Right. Or I didn't get 25 likes on my post.
Right. And they count it minute by minute. Like I see, like if they'll post something, and then within 2 minutes, if they're not hitting their average likes per minute, they'll take down the post, like in 2 minutes. And I feel like you've weaned yourself. I've had that addiction, and I've lowered it a little lately, but it's still, I still think about it. I feel like you've weaned yourself completely off that addiction. So how do you wean yourself off?
I wish, dude. I love when people tell me, from the outside, everything looks great. And I'm like, nah, it's turbulent seas in here, man. Like, you may look great, but that's not how it is.
I believe it. But again, as you mentioned, we get to update all in these podcasts, and you've been such a mentor to me through the years, which I'm grateful for. I get to ask you these questions right now that I'm working through.
Yeah. You know what's funny? The first thing I think about is like, I feel like, it's weird. We live in a world right now, I think this is slowly changing, but we live in a world where that addiction is actually beneficial to you if you are in the media and if you have a media-centered business, which you do. That addiction actually helps the business.
Sure.
So at least in the short term, right? In the short term, that's one of those things where it's like, that works, right? The way that I've dealt with dealing like that is, it wasn't really a conscious thing, man. It was like, I think it was just, this is more of a slow thing, but as I kind of went through therapy and as I kind of really dove into myself and my emotions and all that kind of stuff, I really just went to the core question. And the core question for me is, why do I do any of this? What does this matter, right? What really matters to me? And the answer I always came back to were there are only two things that matter. The relationships I have with the people I love, right? Which at the core is my family, and then radiating out for that are my friends, like people like you, all the people I work with, all that kind of stuff. And then the work that I do that helps those people in the world. Those are the only two things that actually matter. And once I really emotionally connected with that, it's like I just couldn't get into, it's like all the volume on the media stuff just turned all the way down.
But don't you feel like let's say thousands of people on or millions of people on social media suddenly are trying to pull you down for whatever these reasons we discussed before? Don't you feel like a little bit these anonymous people have their hands in your pocket trying to stop you from doing what you're doing?
Yeah, I mean, yeah, of course, to some extent.
These days, we're all investors, trying to be smart with our money despite our worst impulses. But at iShares, we believe that deep down inside of every investor is a better investor. One that's just waiting to be let out. Explore iShares ETFs and insights and let your best investor out. Visit iShares.com for more information.
You know what I love about fantasy sports is that even though I'm not going to be a great basketball player or a baseball player or a football player or whatever, I feel like I get to participate and make decisions and use my knowledge of these different leagues or these different sports to compete. So it's like I can pick my team or I can pick my favorite players and I could use my knowledge to make predictions and maybe even make money. So with the basketball season here, you can now pick combo projections across football and basketball from the Specials League on Prize Picks. This is a league created specifically for combo projections that include two or more players from different sports or leagues. Want to play alongside some of Prize Picks' favorite players like rapper Meek Mill and comedian Andrew Schultz, who's also been a guest on this podcast, and I've been a guest on his? You can now find community plays under the promos tab of the app to view entries for some of the biggest names in the Prize Picks community each week. Look, Prize Picks even offers a reboot policy so that your entries stay in play even if one of your players gets injured. For football and basketball games, if you have a player who exits the game in the first half and does not return in the second, that player is rebooted. Prize Picks is the only daily fantasy sports platform with an injury insurance policy. What? So, I love playing it. I love anywhere where I can use analytical ability with my interests to demonstrate some skill and maybe make some money. And I like the game-like aspect. I do wish they had chess as a category on prizepicks.com, but I'll settle for what they've got. Maybe I should make my own fantasy chess league. But in any case, I love Prize Picks. Go to prizepicks.com/James. Use code James for a first deposit match up to $100. That's the easiest $100 you're ever going to make. So that's prizepicks.com/James and use code James. Daily fantasy sports made easy. The future of learning is definitely online. Like, it's such BS that you have to spend $200,000 or take $200,000 in loans and go to some fancy school when it's useless. It doesn't guarantee you a job. Most employers, including me, do not care about degrees or grades or anything like that. We want to care that you love what you're doing, that you know what you're doing, in some cases that you have experience or that you're willing to learn. But people in general love learning and are curious. Like, the key to success is curiosity. And I think masterclass.com is the perfect model for online learning. I'm really happy they're sponsoring this episode. If you're going to give a gift, give the gift of learning. Masterclass makes a meaningful gift this season for you and anyone on your list, because both of you can learn from the best to become your best, from leadership to effective communication to cooking. Let me tell you some of the classes I've taken. I've taken comedy from Steve Martin. I mean, can you believe I can take a class from Steve Martin on comedy, or Judd Apatow, my favorite comedy director? I could take an actual class from him on writing. Wolfgang Puck on cooking. Dan Brown on writing, or Judy Bloom, who's been on this podcast, on writing. By the way, Wolfgang Puck also has been on this podcast. It's such a pleasure. I try to take classes all the time from masterclass.com. And whether you're watching Masterclass on TV or listening in audio mode in the app or on their site, the quality speaks for itself. It's like these masterclass instructors are your own personal mentors that are going to help you reach the next level. How much would it cost to take one-on-one classes on comedy from Steve Martin or on chess from Gary Kasparov? You just wouldn't be able to do it. But it would cost hundreds of thousands of dollars. With a masterclass annual membership, it's $10 a month. Memberships start at $120 a year for unlimited access to one-on-one classes with all 180 plus masterclass instructors. So it's not just $120 for one instructor. You get all 180 plus masterclass instructors. Boost your confidence and find practical takeaways you can apply to your life and at work. And if you own a business or are a team leader, use Masterclass to empower and create future-ready employees and leaders. That's the real education in today's world. So this holiday season, you can give one annual membership and get one free at masterclass.com/JAS. JAS, of course, stands for the James Altucher Show. So right now you can get 2 memberships for the price of one at masterclass.com/JAS. Masterclass.com/JAS. Offer terms apply.
Your business always gets to new and new levels in terms of recognition and fame and success. And, the book with Tiffany Haddish, that's probably the biggest celebrity you guys have worked with to date. I'm sure you're working with more now.
We got 3 coming that are big.
Yeah?
Real big. Yeah.
They coming on the podcast after they publish?
Nassim Taleb. Have you ever had him?
Oh, yeah, you're doing 2 books with him.
Yeah, we're doing 2 books with him.
I think I'm the only podcast he's ever been on.
Yeah. No, Nassim.
I've known him for 20 years.
And then we're doing, David Goggins, right?
Yeah.
David's, his book's so good. And then we're doing, this is crazy. We finally signed the deal with them. They paid. They're in the process right now with the Nobel Prize Committee, like the Nobel Prize in Norway. They're doing. It's an academic book, so this isn't going to be like a big thing. But they're doing because they want to publish the book in America, and they don't want to go through traditional publishers. Nassim Taleb, who has a paper in the book, convinced them to own the rights, and so referred them to us. So we got those 3 are coming a real big. A couple of others. David Bach, who's sold millions of books in finance. Gino Wickham, who did Traction and all those sorts of. We got a lot of those. By the way,
and Nassim Taleb, who is an intellectual powerhouse. Like, I think if all you do is read the titles of his books, it'll change your life.
Seriously. His books are, I think, sentence for sentence, some of the most condensed, dense wisdom on earth.
I would say, and just the words, again, Anti-Fragile and Skin in the Game have changed my life. But then when you read the books and you connect the dots to so many other parts of your life, it's amazing. Because he focuses on his things, but you could take those concepts and focus them on other things in the exact same way. And it's brilliant. But even in my podcast with him in 2014, he speaks very highly of you, which again, I'm glad the Nobel group is going to work with you because again, this virtue signals to everybody who's saying, well, didn't he do this and this and this? And,
so let me, I know the question you're asking. So like we've actually strategically made a decision in the company and you're going to start to see this play out, right? Is that for when we started as a company, because we help people turn their ideas into books, right? That's what we do. And so I was I had to be the linchpin of it because I'm the guy who's written, genre creating, almost decade best-selling books, right? So I kind of had to be that for credibility and for all that. So I had to be the linchpin. But now we're up to 40 people full-time and 100-something freelance. And our CEO, JT, is amazing. And way better than me at business and at team building. And I always say, my team, our team tolerates me, but they would lay in the road for him. If anything happened, they'd be like, all right, Tucker, thanks. And they would literally all go with him.
And I've read his book too. He's
and I don't
amazing.
Blame him. I would too. In a split, I would go with him. I wouldn't even go with me.
Well, you stepped down as CEO to basically take a guy, you did his book. And you and I both feel the same way about education, but he doesn't have a high school education, which is fine. He
did graduate from high school, just barely. He had to go to summer school to graduate. Yeah, no college.
Son of a pimp, one of 23 children of a pimp, raised in foster care. A lot of people would be judgmental about that. You did his book, and then you immediately stepped down as CEO and made him CEO of your company.
Yeah, no doubt. But here's the point I was making is, he's an amazing speaker, an amazing thinker, an amazing leader, an amazing man. And It's why did I step down as CEO, right? It all comes down to what was the company about? Was it about me or was it about our authors and our mission? Because if it's about me, I was going to stay. But if it's about us and them, I needed to step down.
And so I think that was an evolution for you.
It
I
was.
think initially,
100% it was an
I think
evolution.
initially you not that you wanted it to be about you, but in your mind it was about you.
It defaults to that, of course. But it was a major evolution. It was a major decision. I would say it's one of the 3 most important decisions I've made in my life, period. Not even just business.
Okay, let me guess. That choosing Veronica because you
marrying
chose
her. We kind of chose each other.
Yes,
I didn't just go to the store and buy her. Right?
But she's an amazing woman. And then what's number 3?
Moving to Austin.
Oh, okay.
Those would be the 3.
Where did you move from? I
was in LA right before that. Yeah. But anyway, here's the point I was making: is we're kind of in that same point with media, right? Where it's like I was kind of the face of it for a while, but for a lot of reasons, I think it just doesn't make sense to make me the face of it anymore. And JT is now going to be the face for many, many reasons. And so now, literally, my job in the company, we just made this shift this month. My job in the company is taking all my skills in media and content and brand building and applying them to him. We're going to build his brand and put his knowledge out there and create a massive sort of, I think, community around him. One, because he's amazing and people will want to hear what he has to say 100%. But 2, because, like I said, if it's about me, the decision is different than if it's about us and about the company and the tribe and the authors and the mission we're on. If it's about all that, he needs to be the face. And it is, and so that's what we're doing.
I think that's smart because, again, no matter what you do, no matter how great your books
come
were.
with baggage, dude.
Yeah, you have
I do.
baggage, and particularly in this Me Too environment, that's gonna block people who haven't read your books.
Fair or unfair? And I think most of it's unfair. But it's sort of like why stand outside and scream at the sky?
So let me
just accept reality.
Let me play devil's advocate on some of your statements on that, because also I don't want to make this a total love fest, because I'm also just curious.
Right.
So in one interview I read with you, so there's this hilarious story in I Hope They Serve Beer in Hell, and this was also this story was the first scene in the off-Broadway show, I Hope They Serve Beer in Hell. And it was...
And in the movie.
In the movie. And there's a guy... You write the story. I don't know how old you were. You're in your early 20s, which is 30 years ago almost. There's a...
It would be 20 years ago, but that's cool. I'm not 50, man.
I don't know. I always assume everyone's the same age as me. So... you're with a girl, everything's going crazy, you're drunk, a horrible thing happens to you at the end, which people should read the book. But this was a topic in an interview with you. Someone is in the closet videotaping you, which, again, you've described your reinvention, the years of psychoanalysis. You say you weren't a good guy all the time. But on your specific response to her question on that, you said non-consensual sex is different from recording an event. And you're correct, technically. And it's legal, too. Recording an event, and it's state by state, the laws on consent to that. But is that in some way kind of a harassment act against the woman you're with?
No, it's not harassment.
I'm calling you. You said I could call it behavior.
Of course. I'm happy to talk about any of this. It's not harassment. What it is a fucking dick move. Not harassment. They're totally different things. There's no question of consent or anything like that with me and the girl. It wasn't even a thing.
In the article, you didn't say it was a total dick move. You just argued kind of the Me Too kind of component, or at least that was what was reported.
I'm not sure. I don't know which interview you're talking about.
I forget the article, actually. I felt while reading it, this person hadn't read any of your stuff. It's one of those things where...
Of course. I mean, anyone who's doing a piece on me now about what I wrote about frat tire stuff has an agenda, and it's just a signaling. It's just a virtue signaling agenda. What I say doesn't matter. I am just a something for them to burn in effigy.
Can I just tell you a story? So, and then I want to get back to this point, but someone, when I was selling this very legitimate course on cryptocurrencies and so on to help my readers deal with this.
I know. I saw that whole firestorm.
Yeah. So one person from I think it was BuzzFeed or Wired, she asked me a ridiculous question. She said, "When you say Amazon might do this, are you manipulating the price of Amazon?" And I said, Amazon's like almost $1 trillion company. And billions of shares are sold a day.
And thousands of media pieces are written every year.
Yeah. And can you, I want to hear you say, of course, I just want you to repeat the phrase, of course, there's no way James Altucher can manipulate the price of Amazon stock. And there was total silence on the other side. And I was silent. I was not going to say another thing. And she said, okay, yeah, there's no way James Altucher could manipulate the price of Amazon stock. And then what appears in the article the next day? James Altucher manipulated the price of Amazon stock.
Of course, dude, because people will learn someday that media is not about facts. Media is about manipulating an emotional response to control. It's about setting the frame to control the discourse. I mean, that's and I don't mean right or left. They're both the same. It's just two different tribes fighting.
What do you mean studying the frame?
Warfare. Meaning the Overton window, right? Like what you're allowed to discuss versus not discuss. Like it's why. I mean, we can go super, super deep into this, but if you look at any media piece about me, right? In mainstream media, I mean, no one ever talks about, like, if you were to read a piece on me, and not know anything about me, it would almost be like, well, why would anyone read this? Like his stuff, like why? How could anyone even be a fan, right? And that's actually, if you look at all the mainstream media pieces about me, they are all part media elite writing to other media elite, trying to convince them that it's okay for them to dismiss me, right? Like, dude, with literally no media support at all, I sold 3 million books to people who don't read. No, seriously. Like, I mean, about 60 to 70% of my fans, at least that would buy, by sales, we think are men, right? But now, listen, by event, I mean, because I did hundreds of events, more than 50% of the people who showed up were women. But by sales, it was probably a majority of at least 60% men, right? And these are young guys. I have literally tens of thousands of emails from people, men and women actually, who say, I read one book this year. I've read one book in the last 10 years. I've never finished a book outside of school except for yours, right? And so no one in media ever talked about any of that, ever. No one ever addressed why my stuff was popular, why people loved it. All they did was attack me because I was the kid who said the emperor has no clothes, right? Yeah, and you want to see how this plays out with someone else. Look at what's happening to Jordan Peterson now. Jordan Peterson is very, very different than me, but doing the exact same thing. He is smashing the Overton window of the accepted sort of social justice media leftist discourse, right? Well, smashing it. And look at every single piece about him in New York Times or New Yorker or any of those places. Every piece, in no way, shape, or form do they address why is this dude so popular. This guy is selling out 2,000 and 3,000 person stadiums to talk about philosophy. Yeah, for fuck's sake. And no one talks about that. Why? Because what his narrative is not in their accepted narrative. And so what they have to do is attack him. They have to destroy him, at least to themselves, right? Because otherwise, they then have to rethink really what it is. He's beat them in the status wars. He has beat them, and they are now trying to they're arguing. If you look at every piece about Jordan Peterson, same as every piece about me, the argument boils down to here's why he should be considered low status.
Well, and I will say, because I've read some of the articles trashing him the most, and he's been on this podcast. I've read his book 5 times. I could always tell the writers of these articles haven't read his book. I
Dude,
mean,
of course not. Why?
They say things
James,
that
when you are in an ideological battle, facts are irrelevant. If you look at them like, here's a good way for Americans to think of it. Look at them as look at the writers as agents of propaganda for Nazis or communists. Like, look at Nazi propaganda, look at communist propaganda, right? Whichever side you are. Like, look at the actual Nazis and the actual Soviet communists. Look at their propaganda, and then look at what's written about Jordan Peterson. It is literally exactly the same template and format, because this is not a discussion about facts. This is not a discussion about anything at all. This is a status debate about one tribe versus another, and that's it. That's all it is, dude.
Right. And so the point is a little bit, I think a lot of people buy into the idea that, oh, if the media says something, then that's what we should bow down to. But Jordan Peterson, like many writers we know who are actually great writers and thinkers, he is saying what is true to him, and he's studied it and researched it for decades. This is his personal experience. I mean, chapter 1 of his book, 12 Rules for Life, is make your bed. Like, he's not saying these horrible things, and they're saying, oh, no, he said this. He didn't say any of that.
I don't think you understand what's going on. Here's what's going on. For 100 years, the mainstream media controlled the narrative in this country, right? Controlled it. If you were not, if you did not go through the major media channels, you did not have a large audience, period, point blank. That is done. That is over. Now, they don't realize it and they won't accept it. This is all deeply unconscious for them. I was one of the first breaks in the dam. I was the first person to ever go blog to book. I was the first one blog to bestseller, first one blog to movie, all of that stuff, right? And so a big part, there were 2 reasons why mainstream media hated me. They didn't hate me so much early on because I was coming an alternate route. It was much more, I got caught up in the second wave feminist debate about all men are evil, women are good, which you see is peaking now, right? I was just an early sort of entrant to that. But as I got bigger, you saw them all turn on me because I didn't go through any of the approved channels. I didn't drape myself in literary pretension. I didn't live on the Upper East Side and go to the right cocktail parties and all that bullshit, right? I said fuck you to them, and I went directly to fans, and it worked. Jordan Peterson is the exact same. The mainstream media, everyone who writes and grew up in the mainstream media did it because they want to be, at their core, gatekeepers of opinion. And Jordan Peterson is absolutely resilient to any of their opinions on him, which makes him quite literally an existential threat to them in their mind. His status, essentially hierarchy, is outside of theirs. And they want, in their mind, all media must be on our status hierarchy. And so that's why they hate him so much. And that's why it looks like almost like a coordinated effort. It's not. No one's sitting in a back room saying, all right, we got to kill Jordan or trash Jordan Peterson. It is an emergent property of how their minds think and the type of person who rises in that sort of essentially bureaucracy, that media bureaucracy.
So it's interesting because I've been on some podcasts recently from people who have been kicked out of, let's say, that world.
Yes.
And now they have to find their voice. And what they realize, it's like life-changing. They suddenly realize, oh my gosh, I could be honest about how I feel, and there's a much bigger audience that have been quiet that is ready for me to hear honesty. And I think that's what Jordan Peterson went through.
Everyone breaks the mirror that reminds them of their ugliness, right? Dishonest people have always hated me. They've always hated you. They hate Jordan Peterson. Dishonest people hate people who tell the truth because it makes them, even if it's unconscious, reflect on their dishonesty.
Is it dishonest, or is it some sort of
they're being dishonest to
laziness?
Themselves.
Like they're too lazy to figure out how do I really feel about these opinions.
I don't think it's laziness, especially when their dishonesty is rewarded. So all the finance guys you were talking about,
Yeah.
who privately would tell you they were right and publicly played a different face, that's not laziness, dude. They're putting
Right.
on that bullshit public face so that they are on CNBC.
Right.
They are putting on a mask that is totally disingenuous to who they really are so that they get the benefits and the accoutrement of being in the media spotlight. That's nothing more than straight dishonesty and lie at a core level for them.
And it really does have to do with the almost not reading the facts. Because again, we both know Jordan Peterson. He's very simple philosophy, simple guy, but just straight out, honest, your stuff.
This is a core tenet of his philosophy, is always tell the truth.
Right. And he's a super nice guy. I've never heard him say a single thing even remotely related to what they say he says, because I know he can't possibly say these things. But I think it's hard to, like, when you're on the side of mainstream media, it's like you're joining a team that will reward you. So I can make a tweet.
It's a tribe.
Yeah.
God, you stop even using the word facts. Facts are irrelevant in tribalism, right? Like, think about we grew up in when Soviet Russia still existed and was an enemy, right? In that time in American history, the Soviets were the other team, right? And America was our team, and nothing they did could be right, and everything we did was right. If you go look at what people wrote at the time, it will blow your fucking mind, right? There's no difference with anything else, dude. When someone, this is like, there's 100 years of research on this. No one wants to face this or talk about this or think this, though. When you have an identity, most people, almost everyone, once they lock in their identity, there is no fact that will ever shift them off that identity. Ever. And they will literally ignore things clear as day, right in front of their face, even things that threaten their lives, if it threatens their identity. That is the way humans are designed. That, like, it takes a transcendent soul to be able to even broach that a little bit and think a little bit independently, much less actually transcend identity, dude.
Well, and I think the reason I say the word laziness is, let's say you're up and coming, whether it's media or writing, or you're trying to figure out what success means to you. It's very easy to join the mainstream team, make a funny tweet that they all agree with.
Yes.
And even if you have no Twitter followers, suddenly you have 10,000 likes
you're in the
on
system.
your tweet. Right. So that's like kind of this easy way to kind of, hey, oh my gosh, everybody approves of what I'm doing. I have some status. It's actually the reason why.
Then you have to fit into the approved narrative if you want to stay.
Right. And the reason why I say lazy is there really isn't an opposite team. Because what happens, you and Jordan Peterson and me and other people we know, we're not really saying the same things. We all have our different things. No. So there's not like one single narrative like that we meet at a club and talk about.
No, the opposite team used to be in America was conservatism, right? And you and I and Jordan and Rogan and Weinstein, all those guys, none of us fit on the conservative side at all in any way, shape, or form, right? Because in America, conservatism used to overlap heavily with religion and fundamentalism. And those
I have to ask who you meant by Weinstein.
Eric Weinstein.
Oh, okay, all right.
Of course.
Not Harvey Weinstein.
No.
I just had to. I have to.
No, this actually.
I have to underline it. That's
Harvey
why.
Weinstein was a pillar
Eric Weinstein's
of the
brilliant.
social justice community and like that sort of community. I'm talking about Eric Weinstein and his brother Brett Weinstein. There are a lot of Weinsteins, dude.
Yeah.
But you're right, of course. Anyway, so like all the people that I think Eric Weinstein calls, he kind of put them in a group and called them the intellectual dark web, right? It's essentially, what it essentially is centrism in a way. It is libertarian centrism, which was not in any way, shape, or form a coalition or even a party in America. But the way that I mean, dude, like the way that the media has shifted, it's not even left. It's not left anymore. It is now authoritarian left, right? Sarah Jeong is the perfect example of this. Did you see this about who they hired in the New York Times?
No.
They hired a woman, I think it's pronounced Sarah Jeong. Sarah Jeong.
I don't read the news at all.
Yeah, I don't either. I just saw this on Twitter. Basically, like, she got hired to the New York Times editorial board, and she is the most racist person I've ever seen openly on Twitter. It's just that she's racist against white people. And you think, like, if I were to tell you what her tweet said, you wouldn't believe me. There are things like cancel white people, kill white people, all the like crazy stuff, like nuts. To the point where this other woman who's black, Candice Owens, took literally word for word Sarah Jeong's tweets. She tweeted them, but replaced white with black, and the Twitter algorithm blocked her, deleted her account. Right? Candice Owens, right? Anyway, so point is, that woman was not just hired to the New York Times editorial board. The New York Times then doubled down and defended her And now the entire left, Vox is writing explainers about how delete white or cancel white people is not racist against white people. Literally, they are twisting themselves in the most preposterous intellectual knots where if you show what they write to anyone reasonable, they're like, what the hell are they talking about? This is quite literally the definition of racism. Because that's how tribalism works, dude. That's how it infects and destroys your brain, is that facts become irrelevant. All that matters is keeping the identity of your tribe together and isolated and keeping the other. Right? There's a great book on this, and there's a guy you should have on your podcast. His name is Robin Hanson. The book's called Elephant in the Brain. It is the most mind-bending book you will probably read in the last 5 or 10 years. It is mind-bending, right? And most of the stuff he writes about, like if you really know evolutionary psychology and you really know psychology, it wasn't kind of revolutionary, but the way that he puts it together, most people don't know that stuff, but the way he puts it together and then he shows how it impacts sort of action, like most people will freak out. Like, you go to like healthcare is such a good example. We spend the most per capita on healthcare, and we have the worst results because what he kind of shows very empirically is that healthcare is about looking good, not actually about being healthy. In America, that's the way that it kind of works, right? It's a status thing. It's a tribe thing. It's not about the actual results. That's what all media discussion, if you take off the lens of fact, if you stop pretending it's facts and you look at it as every argument in media, and even the news arguments, because opinion at least doesn't pretend, but all of it is opinion, and all of it is a debate over who should be higher status and who should be lower status between differing tribes. That's all it is.
And so the problem is again, there's a team on one side, which is, let's just call it mainstream media, but I even hate that word because it's, a cliche almost. And then the other side is you can't have a team of all people just being honest about their truth because there is no one truth and we all have our own set of experiences.
You weren't able to before. I think we are seeing a shift in the American political and media landscape where that's going to happen. I think.
It started already. It's already happening, but it's secretly because it's not as if you're in jail for speaking your truth. You're a successful person.
Well,
Jordan Peterson's successful.
Look what just happened to Alex Jones.
Yeah,
totally deplatformed.
And by the way,
all at once.
Even if you disagree with him,
of course, Alex Jones
is a
people
much worse on
wearing,
Twitter.
Like kook. Like, come on. Like, of course, man. This guy thought Sandy Hook was a false flag. Come on, dude. Like, really? But that's the point is either we are a free speech society or we are not. And Alex Jones was literally simultaneously deplatformed by all the major tech platforms. And all the arguments now against Alex Jones are like, they're preposterous, dude. Like there is no definition of free speech that man does not fit under. It has nothing to do with the content, right? Like, I don't listen to his stuff. I can't stand it. I think it's ridiculous. That's not the point. That is absolutely not the point. The point is that authoritarian left has now infiltrated sort of tech platforms, and they're like, it's like, okay, we can't win these debates, so we are going to silence people. That is literally what is happening. That is absolutely what is happening. And dude, it didn't start with Alex Jones. I mean, this stuff started first with the alt-right, Stormfront, whatever. At least there's an argument there. Those are the identity politics people on the right. They're like the actual Nazis, right? They're like the actual white supremacists. That's the right equivalent of the left that I'm talking about. You can at least make an argument that those people shouldn't have access to, that they step outside the bounds of speech because they are advocating violence on races, right? Okay, I get it, no problem. No one really defended them. I don't expect it. After that, what happened? Then they came for the sex workers, right? They came for the prostitutes. They came for the escorts. And I forget the name of the law, but basically, like the last 15 years had seen an incredible reduction on violence and crime and assault against sex workers. Why? Because they were able to essentially create their own platforms on the internet. They were able to get out from under the thumb of pimps. They were able to essentially like create their own businesses, connect directly with customers. All the things everyone else is doing, Uber, whatever, worked for sex workers was great, right? What's the law? I can't remember. The point is, essentially they were all banned in the name of stopping sex trafficking. It was total bullshit, right? It's just fundamentalist prudism on the authoritarian left is all it is. And so now you've seen an incredible in the last year rise of all the pimps are back, all the crime and all that shit's going through the roof, right? They were deplatformed. Now it's Alex Jones. After that, I'm telling you, you watch. They're gonna come for the in fact, Vox even wrote a piece about this. Well, if Alex Jones is banned, then you have to go after all the people like that are sort of just slightly right of Jordan Peterson's not even right. He's like
I've
calling
never heard
him
him
or Joe
express a
Rogan
political
or Eric
belief.
Weinstein, these people on the right is ridiculous. But that's what the whole point is, that they're reframing. So, okay, well, now we've got Alex Jones. Now we've got to deplatform these other people. It is a tribal fight, dude. This is not a fight about facts. That's why you see those people redefine redefine hate speech as violence, right? Because as soon as you say speech is violence, you can say, well, Alex Jones is encouraging violence against schools because he thinks Sandy Hook was a false flag, right? It's a ridiculous, convoluted argument, but if no one's paying attention, and you're right, and there isn't, no tribe is gonna defend Alex Jones. He's a conspiratorial kook, right? But like, either we have free speech or we don't. That dude is the definition of like, oh man. And like, don't give me like private company bullshit. No. When you have networks, especially network markets like the tech platforms have become, there is, the legal argument's very clear for this. There is an easement thing. He has built and created a lot of value on those platforms. He has at least some right to some sort of, it's a gray area, but some sort of objective standard being applied, and there is none.
Well,
there's zero. Because if he goes, I'm telling you, you watch, Vox is going after all the people like Candice Owens, and there's a bunch. There's a huge list of people on YouTube who are sort of like Jordan Peterson, but not quite as smart, who great videos and whatever, and people like. I mean, I don't watch any of them, so that's why I don't know any of their names. But they're gonna go for them next, dude. You watch, dude. This is not like, oh, this is gonna happen in 5 years. It's happening right now.
Well,
because this is a tribal fight. That's what it is.
What strikes me is that it's not illegal on the side of the tech platforms, because there was actually a big case in the 90s with Prodigy. I don't know if you remember. Prodigy was this not quite a social network, but maybe the first big popular message board alongside early AOL. And people sued Prodigy because there was some Nazi group spewing their hate stuff, and Prodigy didn't take their messages off, so groups sued. And the court said, went up to the Supreme Court that Prodigy, since they have no control, since they're not doing any curating,
right? It's what started the DMCA.
You can't decide, here I'm going to edit, but here I'm not.
Right. No, it's what started the Digital Millennium Copyright Act, which is kind of the controlling law for all of this. Look, I'm not going to make this out to be simple legally. It is a gray area, right? Like, I get the argument YouTube's private. They don't have to host Alex Jones. Of course not. I get that. But it's much, much more complex than that, dude. It's not that simple. I wish it was.
Well, okay, then, but to segue it back to literally, you asked the question, what matters to you? How do you define success? It's not like you're going to stand up and, fight,
this
your
isn't
whole
my
life.
fight.
Right.
No,
but
it's kind of funny. We've been talking about this for 30 minutes, but this isn't even my fight.
No, but I would say it is a little bit.
AI might be the most important new computer technology ever. It's storming every industry, and literally billions of dollars are being invested. So buckle up. The problem is that AI needs a lot of speed and processing power, so how do you compete without costs spiraling out of control? It's time to upgrade to the next generation of the cloud, Oracle Cloud Infrastructure, or OCI. OCI is a single platform for your infrastructure, database, application development, and AI needs. OCI has 4 to 8 times the bandwidth of other clouds, offers one consistent price instead of variable regional pricing, and of course, nobody does data better than Oracle. So now you can train your AI models at twice the speed and less than half the cost of other clouds. If you want to do more and spend less, like Uber, 8x8, and Databricks Mosaic, take a free test drive of OCI at oracle.com/advance. That's oracle.com/advance. Oracle.com/advance.